Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to another in our Nature Writing for Children series organized by Azim Premji University's Seeking Sustainability series. Many of you, we hope, are regulars in joining us for another episode. But for those of you who aren't, let me introduce myself. I'm Harini Nagendra. I'm a professor of sustainability at Azim Premji University. And at the university, we started a Seeking Sustainability series of discussions several months ago. We have several themes in this, and right now we have two themes ongoing. One is the nature writing for children, which is the theme you're watching now. A second is nature in the city, which talks about how urban places and cities in India can be places of nature. So for those of you who haven't seen these series and the previous episodes, please do go and check them out. I think you'll like what you see. In this series, which is nature writing for children, the idea was that we all talk about crises of the environment, and we see climate change, we see the pandemic, which is definitely a crisis of the environment. We see so many kinds of environmental degradation around us, and unfortunately, these seem to be issues that we pay attention to occasionally, and then it's a blip, and your mind goes off into tracking the stock market or tracking roads and traffic or tracking something else that seems to be important in our daily lives. And environment seems to be a nice and optional extra, and we don't realize that we can't really function unless our world depends on nature around us, right? And nature is as much part of our relationships as our family members. And really, to understand this, children understand this intuitively. And so nature writing for children becomes especially important because, unfortunately, the way we tend to teach all of these in school is very drab and dull and non-contextual. It's often about places outside India, and it could be done often in a very boring way. So nature writing for children has been extraordinarily important, especially in India. If you look back in the last few years, you see an explosion of books for children. And so we've talked to a number of writers in the past few episodes who come up with new books for children and like I said, please go and check these out. Today, it's a great pleasure to welcome someone different, someone who's also a writer herself, Shobha Viswanath. Thank you so much for being here, Shobha. And in addition to being a writer, a very acclaimed writer herself, and an editor, she also co-launched a very influential publishing house, Karadi Tales, about 25 years ago, which made a big buzz in the Indian market as soon as it appeared, because it was something quite unlike the market Indian book industry has seen before. In the past 25 years, the kinds of things Karadi has done is remarkable, from picture books to audiobooks, which was revolutionary when they first came in, to now braille books for children who are visually challenged, to even a movie and all kinds of other things that Shobha is going to tell us about. The vision and the remarkable variety and scale of what they've achieved over the past 25 years is something. And without much further, I don't want to get in the way between you and Shobha. So thank you so much, Shobha. It's a great pleasure to have you here, and we're really looking forward.
My pleasure. Thank you, Harini. I'm delighted to be here. And everyone who's joined us here, good evening. And I hope you enjoy this as much as I'm going to. Thank you, Harini.
Lovely. So I'm going to start with a question which I hope you're not bored with, because I'm sure everybody asks you this. How did you start thinking of Karadi Tales, and what inspired you to start this?
I have to, I've answered this question, like you have said, many times over the years. But today I'm going to make a disclaimer. The disclaimer being that I did not start Karadi Tales, So I'm like I always put, even in my title, that I'm a co-founder. So the idea of the business, I could be a writer. I mean, even that I'm an accidental writer and I'm an accidental publisher. So the vision of Karadi Tales was largely my husband's, Vishwanath's, who started the publishing house, and I and Vishwanath's brother, Narayan, we sort of were the co-founders. When we first started Karadi Tales, the idea for it actually, or the seed for it came, we were living in the United States then. We lived there for about 7 years, and we decided to move back to India. And when we moved back to India, we were looking for audiobooks for my son, because he was fed on a on a large, what do you call, buffet of audiobooks while we were in the United States. And when we came down to India, we didn't find anything. And it was one of the things that we were discussing. It was just at a family dinner that it would be a great idea for us to do this. And it actually started as, what does one say, something that we decided to do in house. So I chose a story from the Panchatantra and I retold it. And my husband's side of the family, they're all musicians, and they decided that they would lay a soundtrack or a background score. I wrote the songs and they composed the music. Now all that we needed was a really, really good narrator, and we just simply approached Nasiruddin Shah, because not only did he have a great commanding voice, his diction was perfect. It was just right. It was not too Indian. It was not too British or put on. And he said yes. So thus was born, the origin of the audiobook within our publishing house. We were not called Karadi Tales at the time, we were called Sky Music India Private Limited. That was because we wanted to do all kinds of music publishing under this umbrella of Sky Music. But over the years, people associated us more with this big brown bear who told the stories, and we came to be known more as Karadi Tales than as Sky Music. And then we decided to change the company's name to Karadi Tales Company. So what the reason for Karadi, which would be your next question, why are we called Karadi? And I'll preempt you there. Karadi, because it was very, very interesting that I found while I was collecting these stories, which could be retold and which lended themselves very beautifully to an audio track, that of all the stories that I looked into, whether they were from the Jataka or the Panchatantra or even the folk tales from India, I found, or I did not find, any stories with bears in them. Or about bears. There were jackals, there were monkeys, there were all kinds of birds, there were crows, but there was no Karadi, there was no bear story. And so I decided, if you know a bear story from the audience, anyone who knows a folk tale with this is my challenge I've thrown out for 25 years, okay? If you know a story with a bear in it, and the protagonist has to be a bear, okay? It can't be an incidental bear that appears in a story of a friendship or some such thing. I know that story. So so I decided, let the person who narrates these stories be the bear. And that's how. And then we didn't want to call him Bhalu the bear or Teddy, or, there were enough North Indian words or Hindi words that had seeped into our vocabulary. It's time for a Southern or a South Indian word to move north, other than idli and dosa and sambar, So thus came about Karadi. We decided to call him Karadi. So Karadi the bear is our Sutradhar. He tells all the stories, and thus he becomes a part of every story that is told. So there you go.
That's lovely. So I should tell you that my mother, for many years, our next door neighbor in my mother's house was Girish Karnad. And when he did the first set of the first book with Karadi, my nephew was then, I don't know, 7, 8. So they came over and Saras gave us a copy of this, and it's such a favorite. That's why I mean the audiobooks, because that must have been some 20 plus years ago,
Yes.
And at that time, him listening to the songs, because we used to listen as children, my sister and I, to these LPs that my father had got from somewhere, which had these people telling stories, and they were lovely. 5 stories on an LP that, played it again and again and again. It was scratched, but we would still listen to the same stories.
Sure.
So good narrator, and just the whole idea of thinking of storytelling, which is such an Indian, thing. Right. So, which is, for instance, our LP had African folk tales, again, a very oral tradition, right? So Absolutely. That brings me to my next question of when you do something like Karadi, which is very much around books, not just of or pertaining to the Indian context, but also told in a way that is very Indian. How is that different? If you look back on your 25 years, the broad variety, I'm not just saying books, the movie, everything that you've done. How is it different from, let's say, if you had been publishing somewhere else in the West?
See, the audiobooks in the West, especially for children, definitely for adults. This is true for adults, where let's say I take a text like maybe Midnight's Children of Salman Rushdie, and I'm the narrator. I would not, I would give voiceover. I'm not even sure whether the word narrator is appropriate in the case of the West, where I'm the reader of the story, where I give voice to the story. I would read it in an absolutely flat, monotonic way without bringing in my expressions on how I would read the story, because we don't want to bias the listener in any particular way. So you give it a flat reading, and the audience then listens to it and gleans from it the emotion that they feel towards the text. And with children, largely when I was in the US, like I was telling you, the stories that we listened to, or the audiobooks we listened to, were the Disney audiobooks, so which were The Little Mermaid and all the Pinocchio and all of those. And there, it was from the film that they edited it down to an audiobook and used the same track and the sounds of it. But when we created, and the reason why there have not been other audiobook publishing houses that have mushroomed or sprouted or come about in these last 25 years, is because the way we treat the sound for a text is almost Bollywood style, So we look at sound effects, we look at a really rich background score, we look at singers, we compose songs. Especially the tunes are composed for those. We don't take like an Old MacDonald had a farm kind of, like off repeated standard tunes. We don't use it we use Indian ragas to make the songs and compose the songs. So this, of course, we were lucky because there were so many musicians in the house and this could be done by them. Plus, when we started first, it was not something we outsourced. Had we decided to start the audiobook publishing house, and had we to outsource every aspect of it, the writing, the music, the song, the mixing, the post-production, and all of it, I don't think we could have even offered it to our reader at the price that we are offering it. It's just that we sort of all underpaid ourselves, and we brought out this fabulous product, which is why. So in that sense, the audiobook, the Karadi Tales audiobook, will always be different from any other audiobook that comes up. Because we wrote songs like situational songs, really just like Bollywood, The blue jackal fell into the blue dye, the jackal fell into the blue dye and went into the forest, and everybody saw him, and then they started singing, "Oh Lord, oh Master," that kind of. So they were situational songs, inspired totally really by because Bollywood is a religion here, just like cricket is a religion. You can't separate our daily lives from the happenings of films and Bollywood. So the books were also in that same flavor.
Right. And I guess because that's what holds through also. Since you bootstrapped it, your vision is there all the way through to the end, right?
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So when you commissioned, which actually gets me to some of the other things, I'm going to ask you about the nature questions for the audience a little later, because I'm very curious about something that you said, which is so having done a few books in the Indian context and in the Western context, now I can see that the role of editors is generally very different in both contexts. But I'm sure there's also something very different about the way Karadi Tales, you specifically, would edit a book. So if someone pitched you an idea, how do you work with the authors? Because I'm sure there are a lot of prospective authors listening in on our chat. How do you work with them to make sure that the language and the setting and everything, there's an ethos and a culture of your publishing house, is what I'm saying. It's not something, if they wanted something for you, that's not something they would send to another publisher equally easily, right? So how do you work with them, and what do you look for?
See, first of all, we at Karadi Tales are focused largely on stories that are contextual to India. This is very important. Although we have done a couple of books here and there, which could be based anywhere, and we've done one Japanese folk story. But largely, if you look at our entire catalog of work, the context is India. So I don't really want to have a submission where the story is based in Norway or Finland, or it's about some families that are happening there, unless it is about an Indian child who is adopted by Norwegian parents, and then there's a strife there, or there has to be a link to India and the context of India. That is primary, of course. Two is that unless it is for really, really young children, we don't like manuscripts which are anthropomorphic, which means where animals are talking to each other. And many times what happens is, if it is a world which is set in the animal kingdom where the animals are talking to each other, that's fine. But if there is a world which is inhabited by both animals and humans, and they're all talking to each other, then it becomes slightly problematic, because that's a no-no. Anyway, I don't even want to go into the details of why it's problematic. That's certainly a no-no. Three is that sometimes the submissions that we get, the kernel of the idea is good, but the writing is not good. And at such times, we write back to the author saying that we like your idea, but I don't think the structure of the story is good, or we give them feedback. Would it be possible for you to write it again with keeping these things in mind? Now, if the author takes the feedback genuinely and wants to work on it, and keeps coming back to us as to for guidance, then sometimes such a manuscript will evolve into a final, book ready manuscript. But many times that's not the case. The ideas themselves are not strong. We get maybe 30-35 manuscripts in a week, and sometimes there's not even a single manuscript that we can look at or consider. The fourth no-no is that when you send us a story that you think would be a very good children's story, we want you to just send the story in a Word document as an attachment, double spaced if possible, and with 12-point, regular font, Arial or Times New Roman, not some fancy font which you seem to like, and no indentations and no nothing, and no clip art, no illustrations, no nothing. Just send us the text like you would send an essay for submission, just clear, plain text. If it is for a picture book that you're submitting your manuscript, it should not be more than 500 to 600 words, because brevity is the soul of the picture book. And the longer you write, the more difficult it gets for us to edit it down. And when you edit down a really long piece of writing, then you lose maybe even the writer's voice, you lose in that. So we'd prefer you start small, and then we could add sentences if the book calls for it. What else can I say? Number 5, be patient after you submit a manuscript. Don't the very next day write us saying, I submitted my manuscript yesterday. Can you tell us what you think about it? We like humor. We really like humor in manuscripts. We like humor. We like inclusivity, which means that let's do away with stereotypes. Enough and more has been written. Children's books have been written with this great divide of good and bad, and woman, man, all the gender stereotypes and people stereotypes, animal stereotypes, expression stereotypes. Let's break away from stereotype and look at writing that is fresh and new. And humor, of course, like I said before, it's a very, very what do you call? It's a very seductive device to push in terms for publishing. We seldom find humor in the submissions. What we find mostly, and these are mostly parents who submit manuscripts to us, who say that my children loved the story. now this is again a big no-no. Don't read your children your stories. I mean, read it, but they are not the barometer or the yardstick by which you decide whether a story is fit for publishing or not. The reason I tell you this is that if you read your story to your loved ones, they're all going to be very nice to you. Read it to a friend or read it to an absolute third person and read it like it's not your story. Read it and say, I found the story, what do you think about it? And then you will get an honest feedback. This, I read it to my children, I read it to my neighbors' children, and they loved it. Is really not a measure of how good or how bad the story is. Definitely is not a measure of how good the story is. The last I will tell now, because it's not a workshop on writing, the last one I would tell you that when you submit, I don't want you to moralize the children. They are so clever and so intuitive, and just they have their values better in place than we as adults do. So let the story in itself be a discovery, maybe of some value that you might want to transact to the children, but let it not be overt. And so therefore the moral of the story is, please don't tell lies, don't steal, and whatever, don't bully. That's not never works. Today it will simply not work, because children just don't like to be told, and as publishers we don't want to tell it also. So we weave that around something else, as to what happens to somebody when he stole, or the value was diminished, and then the consequences of it which come out through the story, not as a very overt message. This, I find, Harini, is the biggest challenge we have with our submissions, that everybody sets out to write a story to teach, quote unquote, teach children something. And the book is never then becomes about just fun, just a joyful reading. And maybe through the joy of reading, the child gleans something that's wonderful. But if this overt value moralizing is an absolute no-no. It's definitely a no-no for us at Karadi Tales. There might be still publishers who take such books. There are, textbooks are filled with such things, and we want to veer away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's very interesting, because, so just thinking back to our own experience, so my colleague Seema Mondoli and I, we written a few books which were not aimed at children, but they were on trees, and for instance, how you can connect trees. So cities and canopies, which is art and games and all, but they were really aimed at adults to do with children. And it turned out that we had a side audience which was children of 10 and 12, which we really had not anticipated at all. But I'm speaking of children pulling out morals, because one of the most, for us, I think also the most moving parts was when a number of children would come up to us in events and things and say, I grew up in Malleshwaram, for instance. In my lifetime, I have seen the trees disappear, and they tell us about things. And that in your lifetime, a girl who's telling you about something like, well, first of all, they shouldn't have to go through this. But secondly, yes, they're reading and they're interpreting and they're pulling out, as you say, their own stories. But they're so sensitive to the whiff of morals. I mean, my daughter was a teenager. You don't want to be moralizing to them.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And that age, the teen age, is getting lower and lower. Even children don't want to be told what to do. If you want to tell, then you'll have to find ways of telling it, not just tell them outright.
I think we, in older generations, also didn't like being told what to do. We probably put up with it because we didn't have a choice.
Totally. You're so right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm now going to move us slightly towards nature with children, and I know you have some lovely books with you, which are the books about nature writing for children. So could you read us something from a book or two?
Yeah. Before that, I would just like to see, when I was invited for this talk, I really didn't differentiate the writing. I didn't even know that nature writing as such was a genre, and But this tends to happen. For instance, we would write a strong story. The story itself would be so strong, and after the story is over, we would find that it is a story which is also about gender reversal, role reversal. But we did not set out to write a story of role reversal. The story lent itself to that. Similarly, with the nature writing that you call it, the books covers that I'm going to show you now are books that we didn't set out to write in order for any what do you call the purposes of serving a particular goal. The story, the plot itself of the story was strong enough for it to be told. Then later we found that we've got all these stories on nature, which is just absolutely so wonderful. In fact, one of the books that I will talk to you about, or if I have the time, I'll show you, is a book called Theastery. In fact, this is one of those books which is not contextualized to India, but it could very well be. We don't even know where the story is set, but it could very well be an apocalyptic future in a picture book that we are looking at. I just so love the art, the illustrator's work, and the story kind of just supported the art, and therefore we bought the rights to the book and we published it. And then later we realized, oh, this is a fabulous environmental story, So let me just share the book covers, and we'll probably, if the audience likes a particular story, then I could just read from that rather than pick, or you could choose one. Let me see.
That's a great idea. Maybe as you're showing this, if I can invite the audience to send us in small text on what you would like to see, then we can pick it out of the comments box.
So let me share my screen, and this is oops. I'm not able to share it. Is there any reason?
Shashwat, can you share?
No, he won't. He could share, maybe. Yeah, that would be good. Because I don't see it. Do I see it? Yeah, I see it. Hold on. Hold on.
Sure.
So here are two books. The first one's written by Aparna Karthikeyan, a fabulous author, and it's illustrated by Christine Castle, who's based in Germany. She's German illustrator, but who lived in India for a long time. And this is clearly, it's called Cat's Egg, and we all know that cats don't lay eggs.
We can see the list of PDFs. We can't see the.
No, but I am sharing it.
No, I'm getting the list, the second one, which is your list of PDFs.
Let me see it. Let me do it again. Hold on. I've got that. Hold on.
No problem.
Sorry. One of these days we'll get all this right.
Right.
Window. I don't know why it doesn't come up.
Let me see if I can quickly share. Shashwat, here a comment from Shashwat. Shashwat says you. Now it's come. Now it's come. Perfect.
Do you see it?
You just go to yes. Now we can see it.
All right. Do you want to put it on big screen? I mean, without. All right. So this is Cat's Egg and the Lizard's Tail. And Cat's Egg, as we all know, cats don't lay eggs. And so this is a story about a cat, of course, wakes up to find an egg under her, and she goes around. She thinks she's laid an egg, and so she goes around asking the other creatures in the garden whether they could mind her egg for her. And through the process, we get to know about a crow's egg or a crow's nest, and a turtle's egg, and a quail's egg. And of course, we come to know in the end that cats don't lay eggs. And this is a conversation that she shares with her very best friend, the dog. It's a lovely, lovely story, only to discover in the end, I don't know, I should give the story away, it doesn't matter, to discover that it's Easter, and what she finds under her her is an Easter egg that's been hidden. And by the time she finishes her entire route, she finds that the egg has melted. So in this, we also have a little note which says that cats and dogs are not allowed to eat chocolate, that it's not good for them or it's even poisonous to them, and the fact that many uh, the how different creatures bear their young, you know. The Lizard's Tale is, again, it's written by me. It's an adaptation, actually, I think, from a Tamil folk tale where a lizard loses its tail, and it goes around asking many, many creatures whether they could lend their tail. It goes to the squirrel, it goes to the cow, it goes to the dog, and finally, we all know that this lizard's tail kind of regenerates itself, and this is a story of what happens in nature to reptiles, to some reptiles, uh, and the and the uses of tails. If you could have the next one, please. Dodgy Stripes is a beautiful, beautiful story about the Bengal tiger, the endangered Bengal tiger, which this particular story is a fictional story, which talks about this one particular tiger which walks into a Tibetan monastery, and the monks there find that the tiger has lost all its stripes. The tiger's name is Dorje, and through the story of the tiger, we come to know how the tigers are poached and trapped, and what happens to their skins and other parts of their body. And the end of the story, we end it in a hopeful note that the stripes start to reappear on the tiger, on Dorje, and then we say that there's still hope. So that's another wildlife story that we have, a dancing bear. This used to, I've seen this when I was a child. It's no longer there. I think it's been forbidden. I don't know about the north, where the bears are taken around and, they are made to perform for small little crowds of people, and they put really a steel rod through the muzzle. Is very painful and very hurtful. And this is a story about a young boy called Altaf who wants to free his bear and leave it into the woods and not do this to the bear. So it's a lovely story as well. Next one, please. This is our most recent book. It's not published yet. It's called Waiting for Turtles. It's about our Olive Ridley turtle, and it's written by a wonderful author who himself is a marine biologist and has worked a lot with turtles, and it's set in the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands, and we are very, very excited about this book. It's already translated into Hindi and Telugu, so we are really excited about that. If as you guys are looking at each of these covers, please tell me if there's any one particular cover that captures your interest, and I'm happy to share the book with you. Yeah. Okay, this is Theastery, the book I was telling you about. The art is all a collage. It's made from collage art, and it's about this young girl who's often told a story by her parents as to once upon a time in the city that we live, there used to be things called trees, So it is about, and she has never seen a tree in her life. And one day there's a leaf that comes floating into her room. It's slightly fantastical and slightly set in an apocalyptic kind of world where, there are only concrete jungles, only stone and bricks and big buildings, and there is no whiff of even a little bit of green. I love the story. Next. This is something I've written. I loved writing this book. It's a two-way book. As you can see, you can read the book from either side. You can read it from the blue side or the teal color side, or from the other side. You have to turn the book each time. And the Insect Boy is about this young child who has been really troubled by insects from the time he was born until the time he's 10 or 11, until there's a turning point in his life, and which then gives him two paths to choose from, which is the reason for the two. One path leads him to become and uh, what do you call a person? How do I forget this? What do you call a person who studies insects? An entomologist, right? And there is the other side where the child grows up to be um, an exterminator. So this is a really wonderful book. I really loved writing it. This book was also inspired by my son, who just completely loves insects, and I had to put up with all kinds of things while he was growing up, which he would drag into the house: snails and insects and cockroaches. He wouldn't let us spray the house because he said that everything had a right to live. Yeah, and insects were absolutely the most fantastic things that existed. So this book was inspired by that. Yeah. Leopard in Mumbai is again a really funny story told from the point of view of a leopard. And it's about a leopard in Sanjay Gandhi National Park, which is in Bombay, in Borivali. And the leopard escapes the national park and his adventure through the city of Mumbai. It's not really a nature story, but given that it's about a leopard, a national park right bang in the middle of a city like Bombay is what inspired the story. Next. Is that the last? And this is Mountains of Mumbai. Well, it's not a nature story, I would say, but the reason I put this in was because there is a child who comes from Ladakh to meet her friend in Bombay. And you know how Ladakh is, with all the mountains and trees and brooks and rivers, and as beautiful as it can get. And Bombay is the complete opposite of it. So after a week of spending time with Veda, uh, Doma says to Veda that I really like Bombay, but I miss the mountains of my Ladakh. And Veda says, come, let me show you the mountains of Mumbai. And it's a really beautiful book which came out of a picture book workshop. It won the Neve Literature Festival Award for the author and the illustrator, and we are absolutely proud of this book. Is that the last one? Oh, there are two others. Yeah. So these two books. Tracing Roots was recently launched. It's a book about trees, and the trees are contextual to India again. Common trees that we know, and the myths and stories that surround this. Mallika, who wrote this book, is a very staunch nature lover, and she wanted this book to be like a handbook for taking students out on a nature trail and having them spot trees or identify trees. It didn't turn out quite like that, but it's a lovely book and the illustrations are gorgeous. And this is about 10 trees of India and the myths or the stories surrounding around each of the tree. I love this book. Chasing Waters, just like Tracing Roots is about trees, Chasing Waters is about rivers. It's about 10 rivers that flow across India and all the myths and stories that are associated with these rivers. And here too, with Chasing Waters, it talks about we also have factual information which we give to the children, where we say what is the length or the span that the river covers, what is the geography it trails through, it runs through, where does it stop, what its tributaries are, how much land does it inundate or irrigate, and all such details. So I like both these books very much too.
They're all
um,
fascinating. I think people have been putting in responses, and I mean, people like all the books, but there are a lot of votes for Cat's Egg, Theastery, the Turtle book by Karthik, and I think those three are coming up on favorite, but Theastery a little more. Maybe what I can do is ask people to please continue sending in names while I ask you a few more questions, and then we can come back to one of
Yeah,
these.
what I'll do, Harini, in the meantime, since I'm not able to share my screen, is
Mhm.
Shashwat, if you're listening in, I'll just mail you the PDF if you could share it. Yeah,
Great.
I'm just going to mail you Theastery. Yes.
Perfect. Yes. That would be great. Yes.
Hold on.
There's so many audience
Fun.
requests for all of them. So I think please just go out and look at the Karadi Tales books and just lay your hands on them, order them from the bookshop, order them. I
Uh,
would ideally say
don't
go
go
to a
by,
local bookstore, but you
yeah,
can't do that.
just to don't go by my favorite of what the book is. I like Theastery because I really, really love the illustrations. I have seen Judith make the illustrations, and they're
Ah.
all hand cut and select paper, and then it's just absolutely, it's slightly abstract. It's difficult. It's not Picasso kind abstract, but it's still a little abstract. I mean, don't ask me where are the necks of the children, or they're kind of very oddly shaped people, but
Mhm.
I think you'll love it. Yeah, I'm ready, Shashwat. If the audience is
Yeah.
ready, let's look at Theastery. Yeah.
Sure, sure, sure. While he's loading, I just wanted to tell you that while he's getting this set up, I'm thinking of abstract now. One of my daughter's favorite books when she was about 3, and I don't remember the author, but the book's name is Not a Stick. And it's about a little boy called
Huh.
Winston, and he just has a stick. And it's you don't know that it's a stick. In every page, he's with a stick and says, "This is my sword. I'm going to
Huh,
go fight
okay.
battles. My horse. This is my umbrella. This is my X. This is my Y." And it was fascinating because it was just we would then pick up sticks and she would spend the whole day saying, "This is my X or Y or whatever it is." So abstract, as you said,
Yeah.
is just
Totally.
beautiful.
You know what? When we do the picture book writing workshop, one of the things that we do is we just give people a prompt, and the prompt
Mhm.
could be not necessary the prompt, a writing prompt as a line, like once upon a time would be a writing prompt, but
Mm.
not. We would give them just an ordinary looking object, like you said, a stick, and then say, now come up with a story around this. And that's so fascinating. And if there are a room of 20 people, it's unbelievable how 20 stories emerge from that, and 20 different stories, which the creative process itself is a huge shot in the arm. I mean, it's probably the reason why we continue to do what we do, because there's really no money here, Hari. I mean, no
Absolutely.
children's publisher is got huge fat bank balances and things like that. Yeah. So here you go. This is Theastery, and yeah. So as you can see, how the illustration is and how the head of the child is, like, up in the. So let's see it. This is full screen, right? Please type in the book that Shobha can read the next. Oh, okay.
I think you might have to remove that, Shashwat,
Yeah.
the chat box. Yeah. But go ahead.
Uh,
You want the next
so
page?
So you could do the next page, Shashwat. One second. Let me just. Uh, yeah. So this is, we got a lot of praise for the book with Theastery. Um, yeah, I can't read all of that. So this is Judith Clay. Usually, if you can just pause here for 1 minute, usually the writer and the illustrator are two different people. And the publisher is the one who works with, first we get the text from the writer, we edit it. Once the edit is complete, then we break it up into what goes in each page, and then we pick a right illustrator for the story and send the text to the illustrator. So what happens is that usually the author and the illustrator sometimes have never even met, or they are in different countries, and it is the publisher who does this, bringing this marriage of wonderful text and beautiful art. We are the marriage broker or the picture book brokers, which put this together. But in this case, in Theastery, like several other books, which are really, really wonderful books, the author and the illustrator are the same. Sometimes, most times, the authors can't draw for nuts, and the people who illustrate can't really write. So, in this case, Judith has got both, which have come together. So, next. So if you look at this very, we've scanned a real people leaf, at the back, so you can see the veins of the leaf, So in the city where Thea lived, there were only houses and more houses. They were cold and high and without joy. Is it possible for us to see the full? I mean, I'm not able to see it, but I hope. The, can you do a Control L, or so that we can see the full screen? Okay. Mama told Thea about all the trees of her childhood: trees to climb, trees to hide in, trees to sit under and dream. So this is the mother and Thea. Yeah. Next. See the colors, and these are all real leaf prints that she has used, and they're all collages. Papa told Thea about all the fun they had in the summertime, picking mangoes and guavas and neem leaves to eat. Thea really wished that she had a tree. One day late in October, a beautiful leaf came floating gently and quietly past Thea's window. Her ears were filled with the sound of rustling leaves. Where there's a leaf, there has to be a tree, Thea thought. I have to find it. Thea saw her friends playing on the street and stopped. She pointed to the leaf that was dancing in the wind. Do you want to help me find its tree? Thea asked. We'll then have our very own climbing tree to play in. But her friends didn't seem to understand the importance of finding the tree. Perhaps they didn't even know what a tree was. Thea followed the leaf, her arms outstretched, determined. Every time she came close to it, a strange melody of rustling leaves filled the air. Round and round the leaf led her on a chase. Suddenly it rose up in the air, and Thea found herself rising with it. Valiantly, she reached out once more and finally managed to grab the leaf. I like this spread, like she's being lifted off the ground. Yeah, there you go. As Thea clutched onto the leaf, the rustling melody suddenly washed over her, and Thea could not help drifting off to sleep. The leaf lifted her up high above the concrete city and soared with her towards the moon and the stars. She found herself near a beautiful tree with white leaves and a wise old face. The tree saw right into Thea's heart and found her deepest desire. Why do you want a tree, my dear? The tree asked gently. Do you want to build a hat or a boat? Do you want to build a hut or a boat or a fire with it? Do you want to make it into newspapers and books? Tia shook her head. Shyly, she said, I want a tree for climbing and playing and to sit and dream under. Then go plant the seed, said the wise white tree, and give it water and love and conversation. When Thea awoke, she was outside her house clutching the seed. Her heart bursting with her dream, she planted the seed in a small patch of ground. She watered it every day and loved it every day and talked to it every day. And one day, a small plant emerged. As Thea grew older, so did the tree. Thea's children played and dreamed under it, and so did Thea's grandchildren. And if you come to Thea's town today, you will find it there still. And of course, the trees grow into many trees. It's a very small, simple story, So I love the art and I love the gentleness of the story. And it it won a lot of awards abroad, actually. Yeah. So this is one such, yeah.
It's beautiful. It moved me to tears straight away. So
Yeah, and the illustrations are so simple, and the brevity of the words as well, not too much of you have to love it, you have to do it. No such overt
Hmm.
messaging. And yeah,
Right.
thank you.
No, I'm just curious. That brings me to another question. How do you choose your illustrators? If there are, because there are some illustrators also, I think, on the
Who are
talking.
they?
Several of them are talking, are typing in the chat box. So, how would you select your illustrators? Are there ways people can approach you, or do you approach people?
No. We approach people because we know now quite a few illustrators, but we also have people send in their portfolios. There are students who are graduate of art school, there are
Mhm.
students who are graduates of NID or Srishti, and there are people from JJ School of Arts, from DJ Academy. We also take on interns actually. So when we take on interns and the internship is long, let's say from 4 to 6 months, then we give them a book project so that we can work on it together. In fact, we have several of our books that have emerged with our working together with interns. So for the interns, it's a great thing. They get a book at the end of it with their name on the cover, and it's a great project for their dissertation, or when they have to, finish it and submit it to their colleges. We prefer. It's become, they say, old-fashioned nowadays. Most portfolios that we get in are people who do digital art. They have lost the technique of drawing by hand, and even if they draw by hand, they have forgotten what it is to use real colors. So it's all digital coloring. I always say that they like it because you have the control Z. You can always undo the things, but when you're really coloring and when you're really sketching, you can't do a control Z. You'll have to throw away the paper and
Hmm.
start all over again. Some people are clever, some illustrators, and these days the young people are just so very facile with digital medium. So they draw some, they hand color some, they take scans of the coloring, and then they work on the digital medium. So you have the warmth of the actual coloring, but you still have the option of the control Z, because you can move things around and you can create it the way you want it. But I find this mostly true of animators. If there are any people in the audience who are working in animation, tends to be very flat and cold colors, and we really don't like it. We like traditional coloring. We like traditional hand coloring. For one of the books, in fact, Waiting for Turtles, which I told you is written by the marine biologist, he has the artist, his name is Vipin. He's an animator, he works largely on digital. So what he had to do was he had to draw, and then he had to trace, and then he had to color, and then he had to scan. But if I look at it, it's still got the warmth of the hand coloring, but I can still see the digitization of the artwork. While some illustrators are completely hand coloring people, and somehow I like it, even if it is slightly flawed or imperfect. That's the beauty of it, rather than the clean lines and the perfectly shaded colors and shadows. I prefer hand coloring or traditional coloring. Yeah.
Thanks. This is very useful. So I have another question, because then many of the names I saw on your presentation are friends of mine. Aparna Karthikeyan, by the way, did one of our first webinars
Yes,
in
I
this
know
series.
it. She
She
did
just
both.
done she just
Yeah.
done both at this time. So I see, people like Aparna who've done the cat and the egg, and of course she knows. I mean, she's not, let's say, a professional researcher on animals, but she knows them very well because of all her work on them. So she's an
Right.
expert in that sense.
Right.
Karthik Shankar, who's done your book on turtles, is of course an expert of a very different kind. Again, a very old friend whom I've known from '92 or
Oh,
so.
really?
Yeah.
Uh,
So then I'm sure you have people who write a book not necessarily because they come with that kind of um, credentials to demonstrate expertise, but they just have a voice and they have. So are you looking for a filter? I mean, do you prefer from people with sort of a pedigree of expertise or something demonstrable, or you're open to all kinds of submissions?
Not really. However, I would say if you're sending us a manuscript which is about something specific, which you can't just make blanket or random statements about, then I would be careful about it. Like, for instance, with cat's egg, I learned from Aparna that dogs can't or cats should not eat chocolate. I didn't know that, but because Aparna came with that knowledge, and she knows her dogs and cats really well, and therefore, of course, we worked very closely on cat's egg, on the construct of the sentences, or what is redundant and what needs to be kept and what needs to be taken out. The note that we finally put, mostly at the end of these kinds of books, is will reflect some sort of expertise. If it doesn't come from the author, then we'll get one from somebody who is an expert. Yeah.
Oh.
And we'll vet it by an expert, certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Waiting for Turtles went through a lot of rounds because it was set in the Andamans, and the illustrator had never been to the Andaman Islands, So we had to make certain, and there were only so many references that we could get out of the internet as photographs. So after it was done and we sent it to the author, he said, no, the color of the sand is wrong. It has to be whiter, and the shoreline is further away from the beach, So all these adjustments had to be done, and we had to make the book as authentic to the story as possible. Yeah. Right from the color of the turtle, it's not, you can't go by what you have seen in textbooks when you were a child. Like the Olive Ridley turtle has a particular color, and the eggs are of a certain color. You can't just put in any color that you like.
Because that actually, because there's a lot of audience comments now on an issue that I'm sure all of us agree with in principle, that books should be, especially lovely books like the kind that you're showing, should be available free online for everybody to see, children from government schools, all kinds of translations. But then the commercial reality of paying illustrators, paying authors, the time that it takes to do all of this, the number of people that it takes to put together in a team. So I had two questions for you. One is, how do you deal with this balancing? Because clearly there's a normative, there's a goal that you want out of that. You want to reach as many children, and you want to reach as many children from all kinds of places, not just those with
demographics.
Books. But then there's a commercial reality. So that's my first question. How do you balance these? And second thing, which is probably related question that many people listening to this is, how well does it pay if there's an aspiring author or an illustrator? What can they expect in terms of royalties or advances, not just from Karadi, but I don't know if you can talk about the publishing industry in India, and how does this work for a career? Should they keep a job? A common piece of advice is keep your day job, for instance.
Keep your day job. As of now, see, the children's writing in India itself is an evolving field. I think in 10-15 years from now it will be. And what we need for children's publishing right now is, when Arundhati Roy happened to adult publishing in India, in Indian English, when God of Small Things happened, everybody woke up to Indian publishing, for adults in English. And then we have a spate of writers. Now, if there are sections in bookstores which is Indian writing Indian writing, which have got so many people, because for us, English is almost as good as our mother tongue, right? So I think what is required in children's publishing is an Arundhati Roy or a Salman Rushdie to happen. Somebody who breaks borders, becomes internationally so famous and so successful, then people will think, yes, this is a place that has got, one can invest one's life's energies in it and actually make a career out of it. Very strangely, I also find, I don't know why this is, but, once every year, there's an international book fair that happens in Bologna, which is in Italy. And when we go to the book fair, there are all these children's publishers from all over the world, and a whole host of illustrators come there to showcase their work and to put up. If some of you have got the means, Not this year. Again, we are all stuck because of the pandemic, but next year, it usually happens in March or April. Please go visit this book fair, especially illustrators. It is just mind blowing, the kind of art, avant garde, basic animation, everything to do with children's literature and children's art, more art than literature, you know. I lost my thread of thought. Um,
No, on day jobs and also on how you your own commercial aspect of
No,
putting
I
these.
understand that. I was wondering why I
Why you
brought in
started with
Bologna. Why I brought in Bologna here. Anyway, see, I'm getting a senior moment here. The no, the point I was trying to make is that so when we get all these children's publishers from all across the world, and then we sit and then we've sold the rights to several of our books in several languages. Our books have been translated into French and German and Spanish and all kinds of languages. But it takes a certain level of the book where the art and the illustration are in such good balance, the text and the illustration are in good balance for it to cross borders. So when more and more books cross borders, that's when I think children's writing as such will become something that people will take seriously. I was also trying to, what I was trying to tell you was that all these publishers who come from all across the world, if you go to each of their booths, the editor is always a woman. This has never stopped to surprise me, you know. In children's, it's like kindergarten teachers, you know. Do you know a male kindergarten teacher? It's like that. If you go to children's publishing, the editors, I have 3 editors, they're all women. In the course of 25 years, I've had one male editor who lasted for a
fascinating. I
very
didn't
brief
know this.
time. I don't know. Is it because we are catering to the child and it is the mothers in us that respond to this particular field? I really don't know, because fathers these days are as connected to the children, you know. But the really successful children's writers in the picture book category somehow happen to be men. However, yeah, the editors, there are all editors. Well, all is a rather blanket statement, but most editors are that way. If you are asking me, how do we make these books? How do we make these books and how do we stay profitable and also make sure that the books have a wide reach? With us, we are slightly what do you call blessed, because we have 2 aspects to the company. We have Karadi Tales Company, which is the creative wing of the larger Karadi company, where we create the content. This content that we create, which are the books and the audiobooks, are sold in the retail market, sold to school libraries and things like that. Then there is the Karadi Path Education Company, where what they do is that they take these books and they create a language pedagogy out of it, you know, where if you want to learn English, learn it in a joyful way, learn it in a simulated English environment, learn it through audio, and this is what is taken to the schools. So the schools that Karadi Path serves are of all demographics. We have tribal welfare schools, we have government schools, we have corporation schools, we have IGCSE schools, and we have IB schools. So the books, luckily for us, reach the demographics through Karadi Path, which is fantastic for us. Otherwise, it would be just be limited to a small niche, affordable category, which is not what India is about. You know, the whole idea is to spread the books as many as it can reach. As far as what does it pay, it differs from publishing house to publishing house. For a manuscript that you submit, you could be given an advance of anywhere from 15 to 30,000 rupees. I'm talking about a picture book. On your royalty, the royalty would be 7 to 8% of the price of the book that is sold. So let's say your book is priced at 100 rupees. For every book sold, you will get 7 rupees, you know. But It depends on how many books you sell. So that first your 15 or 30,000 rupees has to be exhausted. And over and above that only do you start getting your royalty. The publishing industry, we work in very, people always ask me, India is such a huge country, there are so many children, but your print runs are really small, they are 2,000 and 3,000. But people don't buy books in India, we've discovered. It's getting better, I'm not so dismal about it, but still there is a tendency for parents to look at quantity as opposed to quality. So if one Theastery costs 350 rupees and you have another book which has 25 stories in it, which is an anthology and which costs maybe again 350 rupees, they would opt for the anthology as opposed to Theastery. And that book would have not one line of drawing or anything, but they'll say, इसमें से ज़्यादा मिलता है, you know, I can give so much more to my child because I've got 30 stories here, but for one story, why should I pay so much? So this discretion or discrimination of knowing what to give the children, you know, and how to sit with the child and read Theastery as well, is so the parent has to be educated as much as the child has to be, shown the books. Yeah.
Thanks. So there was one question from, I think I know you've partially answered it. I just wondered if you had any more to add. Somebody had asked about translations. Do you do translations? When can we expect them?
We translate. We translate within India. We started our audiobooks with Hindi and Tamil as well, because those are the two languages which we had some knowledge of and could manage. But there are other publishing houses which do several language editions. We don't get into languages. We are happy to give our books to, like, say, a Kannada publishing house or a Marathi publishing house, which will take our books and translate it and give it to their market. Because not only don't we have the strength, core competence to translate these books in all the possible Indian languages, we also don't know that market really well. How would we distribute there? How would we get it to the right audiences? We wouldn't know that. Yeah.
So does that answer that other question that I see, which is on publishing via Kindle?
Publishing via Kindle?
Yeah, somebody's asked a question that, do you publish via Kindle and it would reduce environmental impacts?
So true, but why would we want to go via Kindle? We could make our books into ebooks and sell them on our website itself. Because Kindle, first of all, Kindle is a great device. I have Kindle, I have a Kindle app, and I read so many books through Kindle. It's just that when you go through Kindle, which is a part of Amazon, there's a huge discount or a percentage that you part with them for them to put it on their platform. Number two is that Kindle has books from every publisher across the world, right? I mean, everybody who publishes in English, I don't know which other languages, I don't know if Kindle is there in any other languages. So how will your book get noticed in that plethora of hundreds and thousands? And so as a small publisher, it's a little bit of a challenge, because if I put my book on Kindle, how will I make sure that somebody catches sight of it? You know? So then that would mean putting in marketing money and promotion and all of that, and which would reduce our margins even thinner, make our margins. So yeah. We should actually make a
really giving.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that I think you're really giving the audience a very good insight into what are the real life challenges at the other end that people probably don't think of when you're submitting a book, or why say it's I guess at the other end of it, when you're sitting where you are, that you would know these. Which brings me to one of my last few questions, which is, the pandemic has changed so much. It's really been world changing in many ways, but I'm sure also for the publishing industry. So where do you think the publishing industry, if you have a crystal ball and you're gazing into it, where do you think it's headed? What are the kinds of changes that you will see in new places, and what are the things that Karadi Tales is like, including with Karadi?
Yeah, so what we are doing is we're converting all our books into ebooks, which we've already done in any case. We were on Kindle and we withdrew from Kindle. We are on Audible, for instance. All our audiobooks are available on Audible. So all our books are being digitized. That is one. Two is I don't think, and I hope I'm right, I don't think there will ever come a time when, especially with the really young readers, where they will not value a physical book over a digitized version of the book. I'm quite convinced about it, that people said when all the newspapers went online, that nobody will want to read a physical newspaper. We're still getting the newspaper, and I'm still reading it, and everybody's reading it. The whole building in our high-rise apartment, everyone gets a newspaper. So that's a myth, especially for young children. I think it's very, very important to give them something that's physical. Also, Harini, when we plan to publish a book, we keep so many things in mind. We think about what should the size of this book be? Should it be a long book? Should it be a horizontal book? Should it be hardcover? Should it be soft cover? Should it be on map litho? Should it be on art paper? Should it be glossy? Should it be matte? And in digitization just homogenizes everything, and this uniqueness to every book is totally lost. And the uniqueness is important, because that's where the magic of the book lies, the picture book lies. With an audiobook, of course, the digital waste, there are podcasts mushrooming every now and then. Every day there are 10 podcasts that are coming up, and that would be another way to disseminate the books and information. But I am looking at the crystal ball and I'm thinking both these mediums will exist parallelly, that I will read on my Kindle. I will also have the same book which is on my Kindle as a physical book, because I can't take a Kindle to bed. I can take the book to bed. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, I'm still wait. Audience, please send us questions because I'm going to continue pulling them in. But while I'm waiting for further audience questions, I'd like to turn to a more personal set of questions about you as an author. And so you're managing so many things. You're also finding time to write in the middle of all of this. So how do you manage your time? What is there advice that you would give for aspiring authors?
I'm an accidental author, really. Like I told you right in the beginning, I'm an accidental author and I'm an accidental publisher. I'm an accidental author because I needed to write the first few books so that the books would be out in the market, and they were not original stories, they were retelling of stories. But lately, after that, because I learned as I worked on the books and I worked on manuscripts from other authors, I myself got very, very interested in the genre of writing itself. So, I don't write every day. I mean, like most writers do. Most good writers or most serious writers write every day. I don't. When an idea strikes me, I run the idea by the family first, which which my family is extremely critical. My children, especially, shoot down my ideas if if they don't like it. I mean, there's absolutely merciless. Yeah, but if they think that it is good, actually more than them thinking, if I have to be convinced by the idea. If I'm convinced by the idea, then I work on it. Whenever I get a time, I start writing, and I don't send it out. Then I send the story out sometimes to my team of editors without telling them that I have written the story, to get their feedback. Because that's really, really good, because they would be I'll just tell them, I got this in my inbox today, what do you think? And then they'll either trash it or they'll say it's got a possibility, maybe we can work on it. So as far as time is concerned, after 25 years, I have a really, really good team of editors, to whom I can leave large parts of the job. I only sort of direct the way the publishing has to move, but I don't get into the nitty gritties of every day. I don't get into the social media marketing. I don't get into um, print runs and things like that. Yeah, little bit I look at accounts, and a little bit I look at what have we got planned for the entire year. Yeah. So yeah, so I have time. I'm not so strapped for time.
Great.
I'm doing other things.
The question from Such, what are the recent books that you like from other Indian publishers that you can recommend?
I don't know the recent books actually. For the past at least 2-3 months, I've not kept in touch with what is out there. But I've liked one book of uh, 2-3 books of Tulika publishers. One is called Gajapati Kulapati. I think it's the fourth one or the third one in the series, which I really enjoy.
Lovely book. Yes.
It's a lovely book. And I like their Ramanujam, which is very nice, which is about the mathematician, which is a non-fiction, fictionish kind of book, which I really like. I like another book of Tulika, which is called Ismat's Eid, which is one of my favorite books, if one has to see. It's really, really lovely.
It's another lovely book.
Yeah, Ismat's Eid. I like Pickle Yolk books. Have got some really wonderful books that they bring out. There's one which is not out yet, and maybe I don't know. It's called I and I, which is absolutely a fabulous book. And I hope when it comes out, you buy the book at least to look at the illustrations. They are just so brilliant. It's I is mother, of course, in Marathi. I and I. It's a lovely book about a mother who has cancer and told from the child's point of view. It's really lovely.
Great. Then, since we have a bit of time, while I was just wondering if it's possible to get you to then read the book about the insect boy.
But it's a two-way book.
Or is it difficult to read?
It's not.
Otherwise, you can pick another one. The other ones that people asked for was Aparna's book on cats or the turtle book by Karthik Shankar.
The turtle. Hold on. Let me just. I'll have to mail it to Shashwat now. Can I read you? Okay, Cat's Egg is good. Let me read that.
Shashwat reminds me that, by the way, for people who are wondering who Shashwat is, he is also one of my colleagues at Azim Premji University, and the person who's coordinating this entire series. You can't see him but he's the person holding all of this up. So always a big thank you to Shashwat for doing this. But he's reminding me at the same time while you're sending the Shobha that Karadi has a very vibrant YouTube channel where your son Kaushik is reading books, so people should go and look that up. And so yes, please go and look up the Karadi YouTube channel.
Hold on 1 second. There you go. I think I'm able to share it myself. Do you see it?
Not yet. Yes. Yes.
Do you see the full screen? I mean,
no, for some reason it's still not coming up as full screen, but I think just go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not also able to change it to. I can there. There you go. Do you
perfect.
See?
Perfect. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. So this is Cat's Egg, Aparna and Christine. So this is their dedication. So this is something I'd like for you to. I mean, I know this is not a picture book teaching or writing workshop, but what we really love is this is called the end paper. So the minute you open the book, there's a blank paper that comes. It's called the end paper, and we always like to make our end papers very creative. So in this end paper, please note that there's one egg at the left corner. This is the title page. This is Cat's Egg with a dog in it. The dog is the cat's friend. And that's Aparna and Christine. So there you go. Woof, woof. Quiet there, says cat. I'm hatching a kitten. Dog looks surprised. But he says politely, that's not how it works. What do you know, scoffs cat. You're a dog. Now, the thing to notice here is the windows open and there's a little indication of a basket over there. Okay. So, and cat is of course sitting on its basket. Next. Did you lay it? Dog asks when cat stretches and he sees underneath her tail a golden egg. I found it this morning when I woke up. I must have laid it in my sleep, cat says, looking fondly at the egg. Isn't it the exact same shade as my fur? Dog shrugs. The egg seems a pale shade of yellow. Cat's fur is a bright orange. See, the humor is also slightly understated. Dog sits next to her basket. How long does it take to hatch a kitten? He asks. Oh, 3 days at least, cat says. Isn't that very quick? Dog wonders. Baby crows take 18 days. Oh, cat says, pretending not to be surprised, and adds quickly as she walks away. Hey, listen, sit on my egg for a bit. I'll be back after a little lunch. See, this also shows the characteristics of cats and dogs. Dogs and cats are very different. Dog looks at the egg for a full minute. He runs after cat. I don't know how to do this, he pants. You need someone with experience. Ask Crow. You are so useless, cat says, and carefully picks up the egg in her mouth. She walks to the garden and mewls beneath the tree. Go away, cat, Crow calls. I need help, cat purrs, placing the egg carefully between her paws. I want you to watch my egg. A cat egg? That's a first, Crow says, peering at the egg. Please mind the egg, won't you? I need a snack and some sleep, cat says and starts to walk away. Hey, come back. There's no room in my nest, Crow squawks. Besides, all mine are blue and big. Yours is small and yellow. I can't take it in. Blue eggs and black feathers. Ha! Cat sneers, picks up the egg and stalks off. The evening sun blazes. Cat is annoyed. She's peckish. Sleep plucks at her eyes and she feels a cat nap coming. She hears cuckoo singing. She places the egg on the warm ground. Care to watch my egg for me? Asks cat. Cuckoo whispers, I wouldn't know how. I lay mine in crow's nest. 2 over there, she points at crow's nest, are mine. Won't she find out? Cat asks. Cuckoo shrugs and coos. All of us were raised by crows. Suddenly, Cat remembers the beach turtle planning a family. She picks up the egg, now hot and a little soft, and leaps over the garden wall. See the perspective. Turtle, Cat says, I have a surprise for you. What is it? Turtle asks. Cat gently rolls the egg forward. Please keep it with yours, she purrs. I bury mine, Turtle says, and then go back to the sea. I'll come by in 3 days and pick up the kitten, Cat offers. Turtle says, but your egg smells. Rubbish, Cat snaps. My egg is perfectly lovely. And it's all gone, and it's gone all damp, Turtle points. Cat picks up the soggy egg and rushes back home. Dog, Cat wails, waking up sleeping dog. Dog, my egg is destroyed. Dog sniffs the egg. He pokes the damp bits. It peels away, and underneath it's gooey and oozy and looks like it's melting. Cat, this is an Easter egg. It's a chocolate that small humans eat, and it has melted in the sun. It would never have hatched into a kitten, Cat, Dog says gently. Oh, says Cat, orange fur turning red in embarrassment. Perhaps I should eat it then. No, says Dog, you'll get very sick if you do. Here, take my dinner. I've saved it for you, he says. Next time, Cat says, curling up against Dog, I'll hatch it in the fridge. Anyway, what do you know? She adds, eyes closing. You're only a dog. That's where it ends. And so this is a small note. And see, this is the second end paper. The first end paper had the had the egg, which is the Easter egg, and here is the egg all melting in. And so, what are Easter eggs? And did you know that chocolate is bad for? So that's,
Again, another beautiful story, completely different from the previous one from
isn't
Theastery, but
it? Yeah.
so lovely.
I
Yeah, and
am trying to
really,
how to get back to you. There
no,
you
no,
go.
you're back, yes.
Yeah.
So clearly, because it's a question from Jerusha Isaac saying, how closely do you work with the authors and illustrators through the editing process? To me, it's very clear that it's very integrated
Yeah.
work. But
Yeah, I
what I,
loved Aparna's use of language. I loved her very understated humor, and even when I edited, I wanted to keep that intact and not lose it in the process of editing. So words like peckish and mules and all of that, I wanted to retain them, even though they are slightly high order words for young children, but they get it in the context of things.
Right, right. And that's how they learn new words, I suspect. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're getting close to our wrap up time. I think it's been one of the most fascinating sessions we've had. Thank you so much. I want to end with one thing, that what are your plans for nature writing for children? Is it a genre, like you said, that you think you would have more of? Are there workshops that you plan that people who are interested can join? Any last parting words you want to leave the audience with?
We haven't looked at nature writing per se, but we are definitely holding online workshops, picture book writing workshops. That if you have a manuscript or an idea, it could be on nature. All these other manuscripts didn't come about because we put out a notice saying please send in nature stories. That they just came as just any other submission. So you could, if you have an idea for a nature story, you could watch out for our next picture book workshop, where then when you come into the workshop, we will teach you the processes of what is it that makes for a really good picture book, the do's and don'ts of it, how less is more in telling a story, and how when you write, you have to visualize that it has to be frame moving after frame. You have to think of it like a little film that happens in front of you. So watch out, we are just having one on the 28th, but I'm afraid it's completely full. In fact, I've got more people than I can handle, but let's see how that goes. But follow us on Insta or Facebook. I mean, I'm so not social media savvy, but my editors are. And you could follow Karadi Tales, where all these notices are usually put out. And I hope this was enjoyable for you. Thank you, Harini. Thank you, Shashwat, and thank all you students who are gathered here. Write and draw and create, and we would love for you to be a part of what our own journey. Yeah. Huh.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shobha, from the bottom of my heart. Again, this was
Thank you,
really,
Harini.
really very nice, and it was just a privilege to, I think, just a treat to hear all of this.
Absolutely enjoyed it too. Yeah. Thank you, Shashwat. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
lovely Sunday.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.